Executive Chef Duane Maxwell from Bayshore, Long Island. Good afternoon, Chef.
Good afternoon.
How are you? Thank you for coming to the African American Great Chef Series. So tell us a little bit about your professional culinary background. How did you get attracted to the service?
Well, I started in Marriott hotels. I worked for Marriott for about 5 years stretch. And during that time, I worked under a couple of master chefs. A few of them came through, and a couple of them took me under my wing. I was right out of high school. I didn't really have a direction I was going in, and I was very attracted to it. We did Sunday brunches and things like that, and I saw all the culinary skills there. I was very attracted to it.
Okay. What about your personal childhood memories? How do you incorporate that into your food, or how has it influenced you?
Believe it or not, I find during corporate food service, working for corporate food service, I had to appeal to a lot of palates for breakfast, a lot of cultural palates. My father used to make some dishes that my friends used to call somewhat unusual or abnormal. But that was only because we were living up here in the north. My father grew up in the south, so he made corn cakes, and we had grits, and fried fish, and all these different things. In fact, we might have had corn cakes for dinner. Friends of mine came over and said, "Hey, what's this? You having pancakes for dinner?" And it was just he influenced me a lot on some southern cuisines, some southern things.
Now, was any of that information actually documented and traditionally passed to you, or did you actually just get it from watching your mom or your father cook in the kitchen and then picking it up from there?
Just watching. Yeah, just watching.
Yeah. We're missing that link in reference to documentation, cookbooks, and things of that nature. Would you agree?
Yes, I would say so. Even though I have seen a lot of cookbooks that are geared towards southern cooking and more like home style cooking, there are cookbooks out there. Yeah.
Tell me how your food has evolved over the years. Are you cooking simpler or more complex dishes?
I'm cooking with a little more flavorful, a little less salt. I'm using more or less kosher salt now. I'm trying to incorporate, let's say for instance, instead of using roux or cornstarch to thicken something, I believe there's a lot of flavor, and believe it or not, quote unquote, leftovers, like rice you had from the day before. I would puree that down and use that to thicken soup or a sauce or something of that nature. And I found out that it adds a tremendous amount of flavor and texture to what you're doing, depending on what it is.
Wow. Now, as an African American chef, and you obviously have come up through the ranks, how has the corporate environment and the professional environment treated you or embraced you as an African American chef?
Well, that's a long story. I've been in business 17 years now, and quite often I find myself being the only, first of all, being the only cook in the kitchen, then moving on being the only supervisory chef or in the kitchen, and then let alone now, as I move on, management. Very few African Americans in management. Why? In fact, I've had non-African Americans ask me, well, I don't know why they don't go out for this sort of thing. And that's another story for another time. And I find that perseverance will endure all. And if you persevere and you give 110%, which is what you should do if you want to succeed in anything, you will succeed.
Well, I'm not going to let you off the hook that easy, Chef. Now, let me just, I know that at the lower level, the entry level jobs, you see quite a few African American and even Hispanic in the kitchen. Now, as they move through the technical skills into the conceptual and human, into interpersonal communicative skills levels, middle management basically, what happens?
What happens? You get what we would call, instead of horizontal movement, you get lateral movement. You will get shifted laterally to other positions that would probably take more
mentoring and training, what do we do to inspire the next generation of chefs?
I would say pinpoint um, pretty much a job or an arena that you would like to be in, and try to have as much expertise in that arena as possible. And selling yourself is a big part of it. You have to be able to sell yourself. You have to be able to approach yourself with a very presentable manner that is somewhat acceptable by the public. I notice that a lot of youth nowadays have, I'm not saying that hairstyles and anything of that nature, I'm trying to tell people what to wear or do, but I'm saying that when you present yourself, regardless of your I guess your hairstyle or whatever individuality, that's you should always sell yourself and articulate yourself in front of a potential.
What are you cooking for us today? Tell us what
today. We have a braised oxtail and pan-seared monkfish and gumbo.
Braised oxtail and pan-seared monkfish gumbo.
Yes, sir.
How did you choose this dish?
How did I choose? Well, there's two reasons. One was monkfish is starting to become the exotic dish of choice amongst a lot of African Americans. I noticed that monkfish, oxtail, which is widely used in West Indian culture, is starting to forge its way out to mainstream African Americans. They're starting to venture off. Even some of them go now, so, which is that's actually a big leap for us, since we used to fried chicken, ribs, and basics. It's very difficult. I know it's for my family. If I try to cook something different, they shy away from it. Right. You put in front of them a nice pot of some oxtail, cooked the right way. It's all on the beef side, so I would say that people tend to gravitate towards that. Monkfish I chose because monkfish is a fish that gained some notoriety back in the early 80s and kind of phased out. And I still think that that's a fish that can be used widely. It's considered the poor man's lobster. Okay? It's also known as goosefish or lawyerfish or anglerfish. Okay? And it takes very well to stewed position in stews and soups, because it's a very dense fish and it holds up quite well. Okay?
All right. Sounds great. I'm ready to taste it. You ready to cook it?
Absolutely.
Let's go.
Hello, my name is Duane Maxwell. I'm an executive chef for Stexel Marriott Services. And here I'm going to prepare a dish for you, which is a braised oxtail and pan-seared monk gumbo. My ingredients are as follows. I have a scallions, andouille sausage, concassé tomato, diced celery. I have okra, jalapeno, onions. I have some flour, which I'm going to toast for you in a little while, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. Garlic. I have a series of herbs consisting of thyme, basil, some kosher salt. Okay, I have onion powder, black pepper, red wine, olive oil, chicken stock, and a mirepoix. I chose these particular meats because monkfish in particular is a fish that has not been widely used in a long time. As far as its notoriety has not been as popular. Back in the 80s, monkfish was used very widely, and it was less expensive. Monkfish is also known as poor man's lobster. As I said in an interview with Jason, the oxtail is also become more widely used. And I use these because I feel that these two components together would make a great dish. They hold up very well in stew format. And I'm going to start right in with a concassé tomato. Now, the concassé tomato, what we're going to do is we're going to core it. Okay? I'm going to core this tomato. All right? We're going to lance the bottom, which I'm going to place the tomatoes in the boiling water, and I'm going to, what we would call, blanch the skin off the tomato. I'm doing this because we want to get rid of the skin, and we want to allow ourselves access to the flesh of the tomato.
Executive Chef Duane Maxwell preparing monkfish and oxtail gumbo.
I'm just going to roll these around a little bit in this boiling water. In the meantime, I'm going to fire up this flame because to blanch the tomatoes takes a couple minutes. And at this time, I'm going to toast some flour that later on we're going to use to actually thicken the gumbo. Okay? There's a funny little story about flour. I learned quite a few years ago that I was allergic to flour. Some kind of pastry chef I've met, huh? I learned this working for a chef, Chef James Lewis of the John Peel Room, and he had me making doughs and things like that in his pastry kitchen, and I'm making them sneezing. I'm like, wow, what is going on here? Every time I work with flour, I sneeze. And from then on, I found out that every time that I use flour, I sneeze. Remarkably, I haven't started sneezing yet. The key to this is to keep moving the flour. You don't want the flour to scorch, but you want it to lightly brown. And if you notice, the flour is starting to lightly brown. It's becoming a beige color. And I'm going to keep moving it until it gets a nice chestnut brown. We're almost there. All right. I'm going to pull this off because what happens is the pan holds heat and it'll continue to cook. Okay, let's see if these tomatoes are ready. Oh, they look good. They look good. All right, here we go. I'm now going to take the tomatoes and I'm going to shock them in an ice water bath. To shock them so that two things happen. As they get cold, the skin will pull away from the meat. And two, they're much better to handle when they're ice cold. I'm going to, this time, peel the skin off the tomato, reveal the flesh. Okay, good. All right, here we go. Now, traditionally, taught quarter the tomatoes. In fact, I was quartering tomatoes for a chef once, working with Chef John Ferrara. I was out in a Italian restaurant. He wanted some composite tomatoes, and I'm quartering these tomatoes to him. And he tells me, he says, hey, man, you know, it's a much easier way to do it. So basically, cut the tomato in half, squeeze the seeds out. Okay? And this one happens not to have any seeds at all. But I'm going to show you both ways. He showed me this way. It's a very easy way to do. We pulled the seeds out, and it worked. Another way to do it would be to quarter. Okay? And once you quarter it, it also allows you access to the seeds. You can pull the seeds out, and you can have the flesh for yourself that way also. Okay? Here we go. oxtail typically would be marinated the night before with garlic, basil, thyme, onion powder, paprika. Okay? You want it to sit overnight. Okay? And then the next day, after the flavor is soaked in, also salt and pepper. After the flavor is soaked in, then you want to braise it. Oxtail takes some time to cook. So it's not, if you're preparing this dish, one of the first things you should do is to season your oxtail, okay, the day before, and prepare it earlier that day. I would guess 5 hours before you would eat it. I'm going to add to this pan, I have it braised here, about 2 tablespoons of oil. Okay? I'm going to add my oxtail. Okay? And be very careful. The oxtail holds a lot of liquid at times, and if you have a very hot pan and you're dropping liquid into a hot pan with oil, you can burn yourself quite severely. My father never made oxtail, my mother never made oxtail for me when I was younger, but after experiencing it now, I sure wish it did. Okay. You notice the oxtail, you use the entire portion of the oxtail. The tail starts out very large and ends up in the small tail as if you were using any other tail, the shape of any other tail. You simply want to sear this to lock in all the pores. Do that so no flavor escapes, and you have all the flavor trapped in. It leaves the oxtail nice and juicy. Okay? Now once you've seared this off, you got a nice color on it, you're going to add your mirepoix. To this amount of oxtail, I have about a half an onion, I have 1 whole carrot, and I have about 3 stalks of celery. Would also like to add a little garlic. I have some chopped garlic here. I'm going to add to the pan. Stir that around. We get some nice flavor in the bottom of that pan. All right. Okay, moving right along. Braising is a technique that consists of pan searing a meat, okay, with a small amount of fat, okay. I usually add a mirepoix. You add an amount of liquid so that you can, and at this time I'm adding 2 cups of red wine, so that you can cook that meat in the liquid and approximately 2 cups of chicken stock. And cook that meat in that liquid with a cover in an oven. Now this oxtail should cook for approximately 4 hours. Checking it, making sure the liquid level is there. Okay? You want to reduce it down. You want that liquid to reduce down, but you don't want it to reduce down to a point where you're going to burn your vegetables or burn your oxtail. I just so happen to have some that's prepared already. Okay? There we go. And this is the finished product. Okay? The oxtail is nice, cooked down. Okay? vegetables are nice and cooked down also. At this time, you want to strain it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the oxtail so that I can get to the liquid. I'm going to save that liquid because there's a lot of flavor in that liquid. Okay. Woo, got away. Okay. We're going to place that right there. Now. Okay. All right. What we want to do is we want to strain this liquid. All right. So we don't make a mess. All right. There we go. Turn that off. All right. I'm going to place this on the side for now. Now, the next phase, I'm going to saute the monkfish that I have also seasoned, salt, pepper, thyme, oregano, onion powder, and basil. Okay? I'm going to add a small amount of fat to this pan. All right? I'm going to let that get nice and hot. I have andouille sausage here. That is widely used in Louisiana. It is a spicy, hot sausage that is used to flavor gumbos and soups and things of that nature. There we go. I'm going to flavor this oil with this andouille sausage. What this is called is rendering. I'm going to render the fat out of this sausage to add flavor. To the gumbo. It makes it spicy. It adds that pork flavor that you need in there. And it just rounds off the soup quite well. Okay, just going to check on my flour here. All right. All right. Good, I'm going to let that render down a little bit. And notice you get some shrinkage in the andouille because it's letting off that fat, all of that good fat that's in there. Now be aware that the andouille is spicy, so when you're adding the jalapenos, you don't want to add too much jalapeno because you're always going to have some spice from the andouille. So you want to balance those flavors. All right, it's just about ready. I'm going to remove the andouille now. Okay, and then we're going to get ready to saute our pans here. Our monkfish. All right. Okay, we have our seasoned monkfish. Pan's nice and hot. I'm going to adjust the flame on this a little bit. We want to make sure we get a nice sear out of it. There we go. There's that sizzle I was looking for. Very important to hear a sizzle when you're searing or sauteing. Because if you don't hear it, then the fish, it's not cooking the way it should be cooked. You want to lock those pores in right away. You want to trap in all the juices from the fish so that you can taste it. Taste all those juices, doesn't dry out. And that it won't boil while you're cooking. You want to get some color from the monkfish? I would say a light golden brown if you can out of that. Alright. I'm going to add just a little bit more oil to this just to ensure that it won't stick. Alright. You just want to lightly pan-sear this. You don't want to fully cook it because you will continue to cook everything together at the end. We do this separately because monkfish and oxtail obviously don't cook at the same rates. So basically you would like to bring everything up to the same point and then add everything together as you complete the dish.
Executive Chef Duane Maxwell preparing monkfish and oxtail gumbo.
Right, looks like we're almost there. Okay, we're almost there. At this point, I'm going to do what you would call deglazing. I'm going to deglaze this pan with chicken stock. Deglazing is actually adding a liquid, more typically wine, but you can also add chicken stock, to what you would call the fond, which is this brown collection in the bottom of the pan. That's a lot of flavor there. You want to add some chicken stock, and you want to lift that flavor right up on the bottom of that pan. At all chances, you want to save flavor or manipulate flavor as best you can. At this time, I want to scrape that fond off the bottom of that pan. Make sure that we get all that liquid. All right, put all that good flavor down there. Very good. All right. Okay. Start with mirepoix. I'm going to add, this time, I'm going to add this stock to the stock we got from the oxtail. I'm going to remove monkfish. Alright. Look how succulent that is. Look how juicy that is. No wonder they call it the poor man's lobster. At a time, it wasn't as expensive. Alright. Okay. At this time, now we're going to start to saute our vegetables, and we're going to really start to pull the dish together now. I'm going to grab a nice razor I like to use. A nice heavy pot. They're good for stews. You tend to want to use a good, strong, heavy pot when you're making stews, because it holds the heat quite well. It just helps all the flavors combine a whole lot better. I'm going to start off again with a very small amount of oil. Some garlic. Okay? I'm going to get that rolling. That pan nice and hot. While that's sauteing, I'm going to dice up some jalapenos for the dish. Okay. Very important to seed the jalapenos. You don't want any seeds from the jalapenos in the dish when you're making it. The jalapeno is typically in this shape. jalapenos tend to be very hot. I had an experience once with jalapenos, and I didn't wash my hands, and I left the kitchen. And I just so happened to rub my eye. And it would be the last time that I rub my eye after something like that. Jalapenos are very hot. Now, we're going to add some, after browning that garlic, we're going to add some celery, some onions, we're going to add the andouille sausage, bring in some flavor. All right, we're going to add some jalapenos. Render those in the bottom of the pot, bring out some flavor. I would say for this size pot, probably add about a tablespoon. I'm going to add some okra. It's a very unusual story about okra. A lot of people don't know too much about okra. These slaves brought okra over on the slave ships. They hid the okra between their toes on their long journey. When they got here, they seeded the okra, saved the seeds, dried them, and planted them. And they got okra. Okra is also tends to be very, I call it glutinous or slimy. Some people are apt not to want to use okra. I think okra is a very good vegetable. It's very good fried, and it's very good in gumbos. Okay. We want to continue to saute our vegetables here. We want to sweat them down some. And at this point, I'm going to add some red pepper to this. I'm going to pour this down. Remove this seeds from the red pepper. Boy, these seeds are nice all over the place. Okay, give this a nice medium dice before we add this to our dish. Okay, much like that. Any excess seeds. Add this to our dish. It's a nice color break. Green, red. I always like red peppers. I like to roast them. Roasted red peppers is also very good. Usually roast them over an open flame. All right. Ooh, what you gotta wait? Right there. Here we go. There we go. Okay. At this point, I'd like to add our concasse. All right. I'm going to stir that around a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clear out a clearing in the middle of this pot. I'm going to add some butter to it. Add butter in the middle of this pot. Because with this butter, this is I'm going to sift some of this flour out. We can get rid of these flour balls. Here we go. Strainer can be used for many things. This is a good one. All right. Here we go. Notice the butter is nicely browned, which is what you're looking for. Brown butter, brown flour. Make yourself a nice roux. Mix in with the vegetables. All right. At this point, you want that roux to coat these vegetables nicely. There we go. Stocks, like you say, with all of that flavor. Nice, dark, rich. There we go. All right. Now that we have a nice pasty consistency, we want to add our monkfish, and we want to add our oxtail. All right, look at that. Okay. Finish this off. We're going to add our chicken stock, a couple of bay leaves. Now I'm adding about 4 chicken stock, about 3 bay leaves. At this point, you want to season to taste. I like to add salt, pepper. Not adding very much because I had the oxtail seasoned prior, I had the monkfish seasoned prior, and at this point, with the andouille, it wouldn't take much more seasoning to complete this dish. At the very end, I would like to add a small amount of scallions. Actually, who am I kidding? A large amount of scallions. I love scallions. Scallions are very good. Scallions will level this dish off very nicely. At this point, what we want is we want to thicken this dish. We want to get to a nice thick consistency. Roux will ensure that. While we're waiting for that to thicken up, I just want to discuss with you a rice, what I'm going to accompany this dish with. Which is starting to become more and more popular. I like it. It's very aromatic. It's called basmati rice. Basmati rice is extremely aromatic. In fact, it will light your house up. If you cook this rice in your house, you'll smell it in the far reaches of your home. In fact, the name basmati means aroma or flavor. I have some pre-cooked back here. Okay, show you what that looks like. You notice the grains on the basmati rice are extra long. What I've made for you was a confetti rice, which consists of some peppers, onions, green, yellow, red peppers and onions, with some chicken stock, salt, pepper, garlic, and just a touch of olive oil I like to add to it. I love to cook with olive oil. It's a very aromatic and just wonderful rice. I'm waiting for this gumbo to thicken. I'm going to reduce it down. In the meantime, what it's doing is marrying the flavors. We call it marrying the flavors. The oxtail is meeting up with the monkfish, and they're getting to know each other. And okra is starting to relax now. Peppers are everybody's just getting together now. Everybody's starting to what we call marry. In all actuality, this is best the second day, because then it has time to sit overnight, and they really get to know each other. They have a party every night. Little do you know. You're almost done here. And when I come back, I'm going to plate this. Make for you a mold, rice mold, inside of a monkey dish. Plate a little height. And I have some fried leeks here, basil garnish.
Executive Chef Duane Maxwell preparing monkfish and oxtail gumbo.
Look at that. Ooh-wee. As Justin Wilson would say. We want to grab some nice whole pieces of monkfish. We want to alternate there. And everything is just holding together very nicely.
That smells good eating over here.
Hey, Jason, how you doing, man?
What's happening, Chef?
All right, man.
Smells
How's
good,
it
looks
going?
good.